So that's obviously a pretty incredible thing that you guys are doing here, and you certainly make it sound super easy. I assume, though, that you have your fabricator involved really early in the process. You've worked out the details of what kind of information they needed, what kind of format, exactly what data you are going to send, what data you're not going to send. Can you talk through some of those decisions and the process you guys went through to make this pretty incredible thing happen?
Sure. Yeah. So, I think key to this process is that with our studio working kind of embedded with the sports and entertainment design team from the very beginning of this project, and working really closely with the structural engineer, and having the benefit of Zaner come on board, we were able to have early conversations about not only what material we might use, what's available, including the finishing and the feasibility of sourcing the material and so forth, but we could also understand the fabrication process from Zaner's perspective in terms of what they have on their shop floor, what they're able to achieve, and how they can, for instance, there's different ways you could create a perforation. We could water jet cut it, we could laser cut it, we could punch it with a die. So there's all these considerations, and so we have the good fortune of having some people on the team that not only have the computer programming skills necessary to create this and think this through, but people like James Wharton, who was working on this project, he has a lot of experience with robotic manufacturing, and so having people with the skills like this, of which we have a few on the team that have worked in the robotics lab at their universities and done some work like this, we can have a much more beneficial conversation with the fabricator early on, because we can speak the same language, and so we can start to understand, these are people that have had experience with the code used in the shop, and what's running the machines on the shop floor, and so we can better understand how can we best give the most pertinent information with the least amount of kind of noise delivered to the fabricator for a really easy process.
So was it sort of, I mean, I would have guessed you guys had some early conversations, the people on your team and the people on their team who knew how to kind of speak the same digital language, sort of put their heads together. And then you guys, I'm guessing, maybe did some iterations on that. Hey, let me send you some data. You guys tell us what you think. And then, they come back and they say, well, clean up your data this way. We need this. We don't need that. And there's sort of an iteration until you fine tune, what kind of information you're sending them. Is that right? Or was it somehow different?
Yeah, no, it's right. It was actually not even as complex as that. Really, it's just a couple of conversations, and we send a couple of packages of data, and Zaner actually did a few prototypes using that information kind of in this process that we've described, and it's really fairly straightforward if you can get the assurance that the data you're sending is clearly and correctly representing the geometry that you intend to design and build. That's really the crux of the process.
And let me ask you this. So this is getting a little bit into the weeds, but still it revolves around the question of how does someone at an architecture firm make something like this really happen at their firm. So, for example, Zaner, theoretically, your client is going to be using Zaner's metal panel system. So, obviously, in many cases, in many projects, you put out your construction documents. You have a variety of bidders, and you sort of decide who's the best. Who has the best price and who's the best quality and so forth. But in this case, Zaner gets in early in this process. How do you sort of reconcile that with the project goals and essentially sort of signing up Zaner early in the process? Or maybe you haven't, maybe you didn't. Maybe they were sort of an advisor in the beginning, and then it was still an open bid, and they happened to win the bid. How did that work?
So it's actually it's kind of a step before the latter that you described. So
Okay.
so Zaner was engaged by the client early on for the design assist, under contract to go through this process, but there was no guarantee. So they're working and they're helping to develop this. which is beneficial because even though they're not guaranteed the project, and even though the client is actively looking at alternatives, which is the reality of something like this, because we all want to get the best solution for the best value, right? Um, so yeah, it's a difficult thing, and that's a conversation we have a lot, because there is a lot of value that can add to the process when you can bring the intellectual capital of someone who does this at a very high level to early on. However, from a client perspective, it's prudent to make sure that you do this in a way that that you can still have options to make sure that you're getting the best value, and that you don't lock yourself into one solution too quickly. And so we've had to kind of balance that, understanding that we've created what we think is a very good process, and it's something that we've kind of solved working with the people that we're working with. However, we've had to understand all along that this process and the way we're working would need to be nimble enough that we could adjust it and kind of respond later on if we do need to make some changes.
Okay, so just to say that back to you, so basically, someone like Zaner is essentially hired and paid to do the design assist work, and then when it's bidding time to actually bid out the real project and the actual scope of work, then it's open to whatever bidders, and so Zaner would theoretically, in this case, be one of them among others, and then they have the opportunity to win the project or not win the project, that kind of thing.